All right, this is case number 2317423 DM Kloosterman versus Kloosterman. Today's date is October 17th, 2023. This is date and time set for our hearing on custody related issues. Ms. Lentz, you and your client are top left to me. If you both state your names in whatever order you choose, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Elena Lentz for the plaintiff, Jennifer Kloosterman, who's seated beside me.
State your name, ma'am, please.
Jennifer Kloosterman.
Thank you. And Ms. Schmelzer, same with your client.
Lori Schmelter on behalf of the defendant's counter plaintiff, Kevin Kloosterman, who is also appearing via Zoom remotely from my office.
Kevin Kloosterman.
Thank you. All right. We do have two objections. Both parties have objected to the temporary order. Because plaintiff filed first, we're going to start with proofs from Ms. Lentz and her client. I have reviewed the file, so you're welcome to provide opening statements if you'd like. So we'll start with Ms. Lentz. You could just let me know if you want to do an opening statement. If so, just go ahead and proceed.
I'll waive your opening statement, Your Honor.
Okay. And Ms. Schmelzer.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just briefly, my client is seeking to maintain the temporary order at this time. It is joint physical and legal custody with a week on, week off schedule. These children are between the ages of 10 and 15. Both parents have been exceedingly involved in these children's lives. In fact, these children, and the testimony we'll hear in the next 2 days, will be that these children are highly involved in extracurricular activities, social activities, family activities, and both parents are present and supportive of these activities. We believe that the evidence will show the established custodial environment is with both parents, and the law is to change that, which it is our understanding plaintiff is seeking to change that, is clear and convincing evidence. In our opinion, we don't think she has clear and convincing evidence to change it, and therefore we are seeking the award of joint legal and physical custody. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lentz, your first witness, please.
Your Honor, I believe there's two people in the waiting room. I'm not sure who you said, Tammy or Terry. Can I see who that is?
Sure. Yeah, well, I can tell you. Sure. Yeah. So I have a Garrett, DeVries, DEVREE, and then just a Tammy, no last name.
Okay.
I can bring. Yeah.
Yeah. Could you call? I just don't recognize the name Tammy, but maybe they're using someone else's phone or something.
Yeah. Okay. For the record, Tammy is not connecting audio. Someone just popped in as well, just so you're aware. Casey Plamondon.
Okay, I can start with her, Your Honor. Well, maybe. Oh, that's Katie.
Got it. For you to have those crayons, and then to have a period of crayons, and then, you know.
Good morning.
Oh,
Okay.
good morning.
I think you're going to need to turn it up a little bit. Okay. Yeah.
That's not normal.
Do you recognize this person, Ms. Lentz?
I do, Your Honor.
Okay, I'm all set.
Is it Tammy?
No, we're good.
No, her name is Katie Amon.
Is this the witness you'd like to call?
Yes, Your Honor. And can we request that the witnesses be sequestered in this matter?
Sure. Well, yeah, 1 second, and I'll take care of that. Let me. How do you spell her last name? I gotta type everybody's.
Amon.
Thank you. All right. Is it Ms. Amon?
Yes.
And I any objection to sequestering the witnesses, Ms. Schmelzer? So the witnesses will be sequestered, just meaning before you testify or not, no witnesses are permitted to watch this YouTube trial or be in the room, I suppose. If you have any witnesses in the Zoom boxes with you as the attorneys, I assume you don't, of course. Ms. Amon, if you'd raise your right hand, please. Do you swear from the testimony you're about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Ms. Lentz.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Amon, can you please state your full name and spell your last name for the record?
Katherine Ann Amon, A-M-O-N.
And can you explain how you know the plaintiff, Jennifer Kloosterman?
We are friends, neighbors, met through our children.
How long have you known the plaintiff?
About 4 years, a little over 4 years.
And can you explain how you know the defendant, Kevin Kloosterman?
In the same way, we met the same time.
Miss Amon, how frequently would you say that you see the plaintiff on a weekly basis?
Well, depends how busy our kids are, anywhere from not at all to 2 to 3 times.
And in the times that you see the plaintiff, are her children ever present?
Yes,
Have you ever seen the plaintiff express love and affection towards her children?
of course.
And can you explain your answer?
Well, I mean, it goes from anywhere to getting kids to where they need to be on time, to hugging, to telling them that she loves them, to doing anything a mom would do, cooking, whatever it is that the kids need.
And Miss Amon, have you seen the children reciprocate love and affection towards the plaintiff?
Of course,
From your interactions with the plaintiff, do you believe that she supports the children's education?
absolutely.
Can you explain your answer?
Well, she's a teacher herself, so obviously she respects the education system. She's helped with homework, getting kids to parent-teacher conferences, getting kids to school on time.
And Miss Amon, have you ever seen the plaintiff discipline her children?
Of course,
From what you observed, would you characterize the plaintiff's method of discipline appropriate or inappropriate?
appropriate.
And Miss Amon, in the context of discipline, have you ever heard the plaintiff yell at her children?
She's not much of a yeller, but yeah, she's raised her voice.
In the context of discipline, have you ever heard the defendant yell at the children?
Not really. He's also raised his voice, but in front of me, he has not yelled aggressively.
Have you ever seen the plaintiff provide food for the children?
Yes.
And can you give a specific example?
Well, I've been over there a lot and she's cooking dinner because we see each other in the evening. So yeah, grilling, she's a good cook.
Miss Amon, have you ever seen the plaintiff provide medical care for the children?
Yeah.
And can you give a specific example?
Actually, recently, one of the children had a pretty bad headache. So we were kind of going back and forth on what we could do to help. And she was the person who was helping get through the headache.
Miss Amon, have you ever seen the children seek comfort from the plaintiff?
Yes.
And can you give a specific example?
Kind of a funny thing. The kids go to her for hugs all the time. I mean, I've seen her wrap her arms around all 3 of her children at different times.
Miss Amon, have you ever seen the plaintiff at one of the children's extracurricular activities, such as a sporting event, recital, concert?
Yes.
What extracurricular activities have you seen the plaintiff at?
Softball and hockey specifically.
And during those events, does the plaintiff appear engaged with what's going on?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the plaintiff offer support or encouragement to the children during these events?
Yes.
And what sort of things have you seen the plaintiff do to offer support and encouragement?
Like most parents, she will clap and she will cheer and she will say good job and she will video or take pictures.
In the context of extracurriculars, have you ever seen the plaintiff berate the children for their performance?
Can you just define what you mean by berate as far as be aggressive or angry?
Make them feel bad if they're not playing well?
Objection,
no.
speculation. How would she know if the children feel bad?
I mean, she can describe what she's observed.
It-
I didn't take it more of a context if she's just defining berate. I don't know that.
Okay,
I've never
I'm fine with the question.
Yeah, I've never seen her yell at the kids or
Mm.
tell them that they've done a bad job at whatever extracurricular activity they've been at. So no.
In the context of extracurricular activities, have you ever seen the defendant berate the children for their performance?
Not specifically, no.
Can you explain your answer?
I think just between the 2 of them, Jen is watches more and Kevin will get more into the game. So I don't know that he would berate the children, but he definitely gets more excited or into the game. And I'm talking specifically hockey, but I mean, no, he have never seen him berate the children.
And Miss Amon, aside from attending the children's extracurriculars, do you know if the plaintiff is involved with extracurriculars in any other capacity other than just attending?
Well, Jen does the fall program for Central High School, so that's a huge undertaking that she does for the kids, not just her own. In hockey, I don't know what her title is, but I know she's in charge of organizing a lot of banners or signs, food, whatever needs to be done. I think she makes sure that that happens.
Miss Amon, what is the fall program?
Like the fall, like if you go to a sporting event, and you go into, say, the football game, you can buy a program and it's for Central High School. You open it up and it has the track and not track, because that's not a fall program, but cross country, football, whatever the fall sports are. And she puts that together for the high school, for the athletic department.
Would you characterize the plaintiff as an involved parent or an uninvolved parent?
Involved,
Can you explain why you say that?
because of all the things that we just talked about.
And Miss Amon, in the times that you have seen the plaintiff interact with her children, have you ever observed any behavior from the plaintiff that you would deem concerning?
No.
Miss Amon, from your interactions and observations with the plaintiff, defendant, their family in general, what parent would you say is more responsible for day-to-day care?
Objection. She's asking her to draw the conclusion that's for the court to draw the conclusion of which parent is primary caregiver. This is a roundabout way of asking about the established custodial environment. She's asking a lay witness to draw that conclusion.
Your Honor, I believe that the plaintiff or the witness can answer this question. She just said she's been super involved with the family for 4 years and can make the decision of what parent she sees do these activities more frequently.
Yeah, I think it's just more of an observation. I think there's more than enough foundation that she's been around this family to let us know what she has seen. So you can answer, in other words, Ms.
Okay. From my perspective, Jen is around more, but to be fair, Kevin's job takes him away a lot. So I think the nature of his job has him working later hours or in the winter odd hours. So I see Jen do more, but that's because of his job and what he's trying to provide.
And Miss Amon, have you ever heard the plaintiff, Jennifer Kloosterman, speak negatively about the defendant in front of the children?
No.
Have you ever heard the defendant, Kevin Kloosterman, speak negatively about the plaintiff in front of the minor children?
No.
And Miss Amon, to your knowledge, has the defendant ever been physically violent towards the plaintiff?
Not in front of me.
Thank you, Miss Amon. I have no further questions for you.
Ms. Schmelzer, do you have any questions for this witness?
Yes, just briefly, Ms. Amon, my name is Lori Schmelzer, and I am the attorney for Kevin Kloosterman. I'm just going to ask you a couple of quick questions here on some of the questions you were asked. Have you seen Kevin Kloosterman also take care of getting the children to and from school, picking them up, and transporting them to their extracurricular events?
I can't say that I've seen him to drop the kids at school because I'm not with them in those hours. I've been told that he does that, so I'm assuming he is. I have seen him go that hockey or take them to practice. Absolutely.
Is he an involved and present father?
I've seen him at events. Yes.
Have you seen him at more of the extracurricular events than not at the extracurricular events?
It's hard to say because I'm not at everything.
At the ones you're at, do you typically see both parents there?
When we were talking softball, sometimes, I mean, I'm not standing next to him, so I assume he's there somewhere. Hockey, yes. If I was at a hockey game, he was there.
And you said you're not around in the mornings when the children are going to school. Is that correct?
Of course, I'm not at their house in the mornings.
Okay, your testimony that you've observed Ms. Kloosterman ensuring the children get to school then is not based on firsthand observation.
Well, what I just told you, they both have told me they take kids to school. So yes, Jen will take kids to school as well as Kevin.
Okay,
I wasn't asked
I'm asking
him
about,
earlier.
yeah, sure. I'm asking about your firsthand observations, what you've actually seen. You have no idea actually who takes the children to or from school because you
Sure.
don't see it yourself personally.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
No further questions.
Any redirect? Thank you, ma'am. You're all set.
Great. Thanks.
And then I can go over who's in the waiting room again.
Thank
if
you.
you'd like.
I'd appreciate it.
Yep, Garrett, DeVries and Casey Plamondon. I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
Let's go with Casey.
Casey? Oops.
Figure out my technology, sorry.
Good morning. You can
Good
hear me okay?
morning.
Okay, excellent. So you've been called as a witness in this matter by Ms. Lentz and her client. She will have some questions for you. And then if she chooses to, Ms. Smeltzer may have some questions for you, okay?
Okay,
All right. So if you'd raise your right hand, please. Do you swear from the testimony you're about to give us the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, Ms. Lentz.
Thank you, Honor. Casey, can you please state your full name and spell your last name for the record?
Casey Plamondon, Plamondon.
And Miss Plamondon, do you mind if I call you Casey?
That's fine.
Okay, thank you. Casey, can you explain how you know the plaintiff, Jennifer Kloosterman?
I know Jen for about 6 years. We met when our sons were playing hockey together.
And how long have you known the plaintiff then?
6 years.
Do you know the defendant, Kevin Kloosterman?
I do.
How do you know the defendant?
In the same manner, we met through our son's hockey team.
And Casey, if you had to estimate, how frequently would you say that you typically see the plaintiff on a weekly basis?
It depends on the season. I see her a lot more in the summer, probably once, sometimes twice a week. When our kids are busy with their sports, it might be every other week.
And in the times that you see the plaintiff, are her children ever present?
Most of the time they are.
Casey, have you ever seen the plaintiff express love or affection towards her children?
I have.
And can you give a specific example?
Absolutely. I mean, when the kids are upset, she's usually hugging them or trying to calm them down. When they're getting ready for bed and that kind of thing, she helps tuck them in and get them settled for the night.
And Casey, have you been around the plaintiff when she's getting the children ready for bed?
I have.
And do you see the children reciprocate love and affection towards the plaintiff?
I do.
Can you give me an example of how you've seen the children reciprocate?
Asking for hugs when they're being dropped off at my house. When she's getting ready to leave, they make sure they go up and give her a hug or a kiss before she leaves for the night.
And Casey, from your interactions with the plaintiff, do you believe that she supports their education?
I do.
Can you explain why you think that?
She makes sure she goes to a lot of the school events. We've talked about grades with our kids or struggles that they might be having in school. As moms, we've shared that. I know she goes to their open houses, those types of things, helps with homework.
Have you ever seen the plaintiff help with homework?
I have.
Can you recall a specific example?
Helping with worksheets that were brought home from school with the girls, when they've had questions and that type of thing. She was right there helping them.
And Casey, do you know if the plaintiff assists the children with homework when they're with the defendant?
She does.
And how do you know that this
Action.
happens?
Yeah, I lack of foundation.
Isn't that what Ms. Lentz just asked? How do you know that?
I believe I was saying objection at the same time, so I didn't. It was.
Okay,
it
so
crossed.
let's go with, we're getting at the foundation, so.
All right, Casey, I'll repeat the question. How do you know that the plaintiff assists the children with homework when they're with the defendant?
I've been at her house at night when the kids are with Kevin and they'll text, a screenshot of what they're working on for math specifically, or they'll call.
Casey, have you ever seen the plaintiff discipline the children?
I have.
And from what you observed, would you characterize the plaintiff's method of discipline appropriate or inappropriate?
I would say appropriate.
Have you ever heard the plaintiff yell at the children?
Not yell, I mean, just use a stern voice.
In the context of discipline, have you ever heard the defendant yell at the children?
I would say the same thing. I mean, it would be more of a stern voice when we're around than
And Miss
yelling.
Casey, have you ever seen the plaintiff provide food for the children?
Yes.
Can you give a specific example?
We've been over there for dinner recently and she's preparing a meal. When my kids are there, all of them kind of go right to the snack cabinet and help themselves to snacks as well and drinks. So
Have you ever seen the plaintiff provide medical care for the children?
yes,
Can you give a specific example?
one of the girls had fallen down and I mean, she's cleaning up their wound or putting on a Band-Aid, nothing major, but
And have you ever seen the children seek like comfort from the plaintiff?
yeah,
Have you ever seen the plaintiff attend the children's extracurricular activities such as a sporting event or recital?
I have.
And what activities have you seen the plaintiff at?
I've seen her at volleyball, hockey, and softball.
And during those events, does the plaintiff appear engaged with the event that's occurring?
She does.
During those events, have you ever seen the plaintiff encourage or support the children?
Yes. Yep. She's usually cheering on her children or the team, depending on the sport.
And Casey, in the context of extracurricular activities, have you ever seen the plaintiff speak negatively about the children's performance?
No.
In the context of extracurricular activities, have you ever seen the defendant speak negatively to the children about their performance?
No.
Casey, aside from attending the children's events, do you know if the plaintiff is involved in any other capacity with those extracurriculars?
She has coached volleyball. She has coached softball. She's been the team manager for several of the hockey seasons for the hockey teams.
And would you characterize plaintiff as an involved parent or an uninvolved parent?
I would say involved.
Can you explain why you think that?
She's always encouraging open communication with them. She has a handle on their grades and their education. She's very invested in their extracurriculars and just making sure that their needs and well-being are being met.
And Casey, in the times that you have seen the plaintiff interact with her children, have you observed any behavior from the plaintiff that you would consider to be concerning?
I have not.
Casey, in the context of travel hockey, have you ever spent a weekend with the Klusterman family?
I have.
And during those weekends, who would you say was more responsible for day-to-day care of the children, the plaintiff or the defendant?
When I was present, most of the children were going to Jen for any questions or things that they had come up, and she normally had the girls with her.
And Casey, have you ever gone boating with the Klusterman family?
I have.
And during those instances, what party was more responsible for ensuring the children had sunscreen, food, those sorts of things?
I know Jen always packed the sunscreen and the food up. She was definitely nagging them to make sure that they reapplied the sunscreen quite a bit.
Casey, do you have any knowledge as to what party, plaintiff or defendant, transports the children?
I don't have very clear knowledge on that one, no.
And Casey, in terms of communication, do you find it easy or difficult to communicate with the plaintiff, Jennifer Klusterman?
She's very easy to communicate with.
In terms of communication, would you say it's easy or difficult to communicate with the defendant, Kevin Klusterman?
He's been easy for me to communicate with as well.
Casey, on the weekend of September 30th, 2023, did one of the Klusterman children spend the night at your home?
Yes.
Do you know if that weekend was defendant's parenting time or plaintiff's parenting time?
It was the defendant's parenting time.
Did the defendant reach out to you to coordinate that sleepover at your house?
He did not. I actually found out about it. I knew our children were engaging in the conversation, but Jen actually called me in regards to it.
So to be clear, Miss Kloosterman, the plaintiff, called you for that sleepover?
Correct.
And prior to the party separation, would any of the Kloosterman children stay the night at your home?
Yes.
Who would coordinate those sleepovers at your home?
Jen and I would coordinate those.
Casey, have you ever heard the plaintiff, Jen Kloosterman, speak negatively about the defendant in front of the minor children?
I have not.
And Casey, have you ever heard the defendant, Kevin Kloosterman, speak negatively about the plaintiff in front of the minor children?
Occasionally.
And Casey, are you aware of any incidents of physical aggression between defendant and plaintiff?
There have been some, yes.
Can you explain your answer?
They had a domestic situation a few years ago.
Objection, lack of foundation. If she wasn't physically present to see this, I don't think she has a foundation to testify about it.
Your Honor, Miss.
He hasn't said whether she was there or not. So do you want to just follow up on that foundation question and we'll see?
Sure, Your Honor. Casey, how do you know about the domestic incident?
I had conversations with Jen about it and Kelvin after the incident.
Then also I'm going to object to hearsay.
I assume Jen is the plaintiff in this case, so overruled.
Kelvin, however, is the child, and
Thank
she
you,
stated-
thank you, overruled.
Casey, can you go ahead and explain what conversations you had with Jen about the domestic?
I had conversations with Jen pretty quickly after the domestic because Kevin had been removed from the home for a period of time, and the situation was very stressful, obviously for her, and the kids were having a hard time adjusting. So her and I just talked about it in depth as far as how to best support her and the kids through that time. She gave me a little bit of insight from her perspective as to what had happened. So we discussed that too.
And Casey, from your conversation with Miss Kloosterman, who did you understand was hurt physically in the domestic incident?
My understanding was that Jen was hurt.
And Casey, you spoke, or earlier you testified that you also spoke to Calvin about this incident.
Mhm.
Is that correct? What was your conversation with Calvin?
Objection, hearsay.
I'll withdraw
agree.
the question, Your Honor.
I agree.
Casey, earlier you testified that occasionally you hear the defendant, Kevin Kloosterman, speak negatively about the plaintiff in front of the minor children. Can you explain your answer?
When we've been there and during disagreements, he would call her stupid and mainly nothing beyond that.
And Casey, do you have any reason to believe that the plaintiff, Jen Kloosterman, is attempting to harm the relationship between defendant and the children?
Objection, speculation.
Response.
Your Honor, I asked her if she has any reason. Based on her answer, I can follow up and lay the foundation for why she believes that or doesn't believe it. I mean, I can't lay the foundation without her first answer.
Sure.
Ms. Casey, I'm going to ask you the question again. Do you have any reason to believe the plaintiff is attempting to harm the relationship between the defendant and the children?
I do not.
And Casey, do you have any reason to believe the defendant is attempting to harm the relationship between the plaintiff and the children?
Objection, speculation. We just went through this and we were supposed to ask a follow-up question on the first one, and now she's just continuing to go to the other side.
The first question, she said no, and I moved on. I'm asking a separate question now, Your Honor.
But we need to know why she says no. I mean, she's a fact witness.
I think you can dig into that on cross.
Okay, Casey, I'm gonna ask you again. Do you have any reason to believe the defendant is attempting to harm the relationship between the plaintiff and the minor children?
Not clear on that one, no.
I have no further questions, Casey. Thank you.
Mr. Counselor, do you have any questions for this witness?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Plamondon, would you say that you're close friends with Ms. Kloosterman?
I would say yes, we are.
You don't have the same type of friendship with Mr. Kloosterman, is that fair to say?
That would be fair.
So, wouldn't it seem more appropriate that your very good friend is the one contacting you more often regarding your mutual children's events, things like that, than somebody that you're not really friends with?
That would be who I would feel most comfortable reaching out to, yes.
Okay. So that in and of itself, that doesn't really mean Mr. Kloosterman's not involved with his children's lives. It just means he's not communicating with you, who is Ms. Kloosterman's friend, correct?
Correct.
And you said that your children and the Kloosterman children are both involved in specifically hockey, but any other extracurriculars that they do together?
No. Our boys play together or have played together.
And with respect to hockey events, do you typically see both parents there?
Depending on the weekend, yes. Both
Um,
have been there.
well, can you please explore that? What's going on a weekend that it would be different that both parents wouldn't be there?
They have multiple children in travel sports. So I can only assume that one is with one child and one is with the other.
So have there been times where you've seen Mr. Kloosterman at hockey and not Mrs. Kloosterman?
Correct.
How often would you say that occurred?
It's been a few years since our boys have been on the same team. I know I saw him last year during our boys' districts when they played each other.
Would you see Mr. Kloosterman travel out of town with one of the children by himself?
Yes,
And that occurred more than once?
correct.
Would you say that occurred fairly often?
Pretty evenly split, yes.
So on those occasions, when you were asked if during those travel hockey weekends, who provided the day-to-day care for the children, it would have been Mr. Kloosterman if he was the only one there. Is that fair to say?
Yes,
And you were asked about going boating with the Kloosterman family. Was Mr. Kloosterman also present?
correct.
Was he taking on other tasks like operating the boat or playing with the children, swimming, things like that?
He was.
So just because Ms. Kloosterman did the food and the sunscreen, that doesn't mean he wasn't there or involved with his children, does it?
It does not.
During those occasions of boating, did you observe the children interacting with Mr. Kloosterman?
Yes,
Did they appear loving, affectionate, talkative, bonded to him
yes,
just as much as Ms. Kloosterman?
yes.
You spoke regarding a domestic violence incident a few years ago that you spoke to Ms. Kloosterman about that, correct?
I did.
Is your entire frame of reference of what happened based on what Ms. Kloosterman said to you?
Yes.
You never spoke to Mr. Kloosterman to get his side of the story, did you?
No,
You weren't physically present. You didn't actually see anything happen, did you?
no.
I have no further questions.
Thank you. Any redirect, Ms. Lentz?
Just briefly, Casey, the hockey weekends, going back to that for a second. Were there weekends that you spent with the Kloosterman where both parents were present?
Yes,
And in those times, what parent did you observe doing most of the child rearing activities?
When they were together, it would be Jen.
And Casey, you were just asked about the domestic, and the question was something along the lines of like, is your only frame of reference from conversations with Jen? Isn't it true that you also spoke to other people about the domestic incident?
I spoke to Jen and to Kelvin.
No further questions.
Any final questions, Ms. Schmelzer?
Yes, Your Honor, just briefly regarding the hockey weekends, that both parents were present and you testified that Mrs. Klusterman did most of the child rearing activities. What specifically did you see her doing?
I saw her entertaining the two girls, getting them ready for bed, taking them swimming, organizing the meals, making sure that everyone was dressed and ready to get out the door.
Is that because their son Kelvin was actually playing hockey?
I would assume it's because Kelvin was older and could probably get himself ready. But yes, he was playing hockey.
And Mr. Klusterman was with Kelvin during those occasions?
I don't recall if they had one or two vehicles to transport.
Well, where was Mr. Klusterman in your observations?
He was typically close by. I mean, either in the room or with the other parents. I mean, some of the other parents would gather in the lobbies and
he was also with his children, correct?
he was there, yes.
He was attending the hockey game for Kelvin.
Correct.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you very much, ma'am. You're all set.
Thank you.
And I did have someone new pop in, so I can tell you.
I would appreciate that. Thanks, Your Honor.
It's Jessica Bocian.
Yes, I would like to call her as my next witness.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you today?
Fine, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
All right, you've been called as a witness in this matter by Ms. Lentz and her client. She'll have some questions for you. And then if he chooses to, Ms. Schmelzer may have some questions for you, okay?
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear from the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Lentz.
Miss Bocian, can you please state your full name and spell your last name for the record?
Yeah, it's Jessica Bocian. And the last name is Bocian.
Do you mind if I call you Jessica?
Feel free.
Okay. Jessica, where are you currently employed?
I work for Lakeview Realty in Lake Ann.
And do you hold any positions outside of that employment in regard to the community?
I do. I have currently acted as Director of Operations for middle school sports for both TC East Middle School and TC West Middle School for
And
multiple sports.
How long have you been doing that?
This will be my third season.
And Jessica, can you explain how you know the plaintiff, Jennifer Klusterman?
Yep. I met Jennifer last year as a parent when she enrolled her daughter Callie into the volleyball program. Every time we have games for volleyball, we need parent volunteers to do either the score books and or line judging. So each game requires 3 adults to participate. And she was always a volunteer without ever asking. She just was like, how can I help you? She has a knowledge base of volleyball that's strong and fluent and was always available last year. So that's how we met each other.
And do you know any of the Klusterman children?
I know Callie.
And how do you know Callie?
she's an athlete for the program.
And Jessica, if you had to estimate on a weekly basis, how often do you see the plaintiff?
Between 1 to 2 times a week, depending on where her games are located and where I'm placed for game management that night.
And in the times you see the plaintiff, are her children ever present?
Callie's always there because she's a player on the team. And I believe the other kiddo is her other daughter who comes up to hug her. So I'm going to assume it's her kid.
And Jessica, do you recall receiving any emails from the plaintiff in regard to facilitating Callie's participation in volleyball?
Yes.
Do you recall receiving any emails from the defendant, Kevin Kloosterman, in regard to facilitating Callie's participation in volleyball?
No.
Jessica, does the plaintiff attend Callie's volleyball games?
Jen, correct?
Yes, Jen
Sorry.
Kloosterman.
Yep. Yes, she's a coach. And
And
she has
during,
been at every game.
and during those games, have you ever seen the plaintiff encourage Callie?
She encourages all of her players.
What sort of behavior does plaintiff do to encourage the players?
High fives, camaraderie, team dynamics, good job. I always view with coaching that encouragement is also modifying how you coach to coach and teach the kid, the athlete, to grow. So she's often giving players the tidbacks and the feedback to improve in a positive format.
Have you seen her give her own daughter that feedback?
Absolutely.
And Jessica, was there an issue at volleyball tryouts this year with Callie?
I'm not gonna say Callie, because Callie has never been an issue as a player or as a human. There was an issue as far as we had potentially some mechanical technology difficulties with our registration system. So we had a number of athletes show up to tryouts in August, stating they were here for trying out, but they were not somehow in my computer system to show me that they were like genuinely had done all the steps. At which point in years past, the plan has always been, if we don't have room for your athlete currently, because they're not in our program, the best way to circumvent that system is to coach yourself or find a family friend or somebody that you know to coach that team. And then your athlete jumps over into that team. And Jen right away knew that we had a tech glitch of some sort. We didn't know what it was. Many people did. And I said, hey, we need a coach. And she's like, give me 5 minutes. I think I'm going to coach.
And did the plaintiff, Jen Kloosterman, actually agree to coach?
She did. She came back and said, I've been advised to not coach because my life is very busy, but I also know it is what is best for my athlete, my daughter, and the other kids that are going to be able to have a team to play on. And she said, I'm doing it because it's what's best for the kids.
And Jessica, did Jen's action in agreeing to coach allow Callie to play on the team?
Yes, we did not have a coach at that point for that team.
Jessica, that decision by plaintiff, what does it lead you to believe as to her commitment to her children?
She took on, knowing that she had a brand new job and some probably transition in life, whatever that was going on with, it allowed her to take on an ability to have her kid play on a team, be with her daughter every day, because that's always huge to be one-on-one with your kid and with a team. And it allowed, in the end, 15 kids to have a coach. We originally rostered her at 12, and there were 3 that were on the bubble of athletic ability. And Jen said, I am happy to take 3 more because this is their true last shot to really get solid coaching in order to go on to the high school level. So she took 15 kids, which is really hard.
And Jessica, have you received any feedback in regard to Jen's coaching?
Yep. We had besides my personal feedback, which has been organized and on the ball and intuitive, our athletic director at the East Side is Miss Jonna Deering. And Jonna called me one day after walking into Jen's practice early on and said, wow, she's so good at what she's doing right now.
Objection, hearsay.
I agree. Sustained.
Understood, Your Honor. Jessica, have you received any negative feedback about Jen's coaching?
Objection calls for hearsay. She can ask her about her own observations, but
Yeah, you can ask. Well, you can't mention what other people have said, ma'am. even though you're being asked that, it's not an appropriate question.
Thank you.
Your Honor, or sorry, Jessica, have you ever been disappointed with Jen's coaching?
No.
And Jessica, does plaintiff appear attentive to the children she coaches?
Yes. As well as also an organized coach.
And does she relate well to the children that she coaches?
To the best of my observations, yes.
Jessica, has the plaintiff ever negatively discussed the defendant, Kevin Kloosterman, to you?
No.
And Jessica, from your observations of plaintiff, would you consider her to be an involved or an uninvolved parent?
Involved.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Ms. Schmelzer, any questions for this witness?
Thank you. Ms. Bocian, my name is Lori Schmelzer and I represent Kevin Kloosterman. Just briefly, you mentioned that you met Ms. Kloosterman about a year ago. Is that correct?
Correct. She brought Callie to evaluations.
Okay. And when does the volleyball season run?
It starts end of August and it just finished up yesterday, actually.
Prior to August, was there anything going on with respect to volleyball tryouts, coaching?
Not anything that
Conditioning.
I'm involved. Not anything that I'm involved in. No.
Okay. You mentioned that you see Ms. Kloosterman about 1 to 2 times per week. Is that throughout the entire year or only during the volleyball season?
Volleyball season.
So did you see her last year between August and October for volleyball season as well?
Correct. Anytime that I was at a school that her daughter played at and was, I work as a director of operations, which is kind of like an assistant athletic director. So anytime I'm at a game at East Middle or West Middle and her athlete was playing at that location, that's when I have had that cross reference of Jen during the season.
So is it fair to say that from approximately the end of October of 2022 to August of 2023, you actually didn't see Ms. Kloosterman 1 to 2 times per week?
Correct. It's just during volleyball season.
Okay. And you mentioned that you know her daughter, Callie. Does she have other children?
I believe she has 3.
And who are they? Have you ever met them?
Nope. I don't know them completely. I really focus on the athlete.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you very much, ma'am. You're all set.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Thanks. Jamie's iPhone just popped on too, or at some point.
Yep, she would be my next witness, Your Honor.
Okay, good morning.
Morning.
Are you Jamie?
Yes.
My name is Matt Hagan. I'm the referee in this matter. Would you mind telling me your name, your full name, please?
Sure. Jamie Burley.
How do you spell your last name?
Burley.
Thank you. You've been called as a witness in this matter by Ms. Lentz and her client. They'll have some questions for you, or she'll have some questions for you. And then if she chooses to, Ms. Schmelzer may have some questions for you, okay?
Okay.
1 second. Get everything typed in. Okay. If you'd raise your right hand, please.
Yeah.
Do you swear from the testimony you're about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Lentz.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Burley, can you explain how you know the plaintiff, Jennifer Kloosterman?
We met a couple years ago. Our kids played hockey together.
And a couple years ago, approximately how long ago was that?
I almost exactly 2 years ago.
And do you know the defendant, Kevin Kloosterman?
Yes.
How do you know the defendant?
Again, through hockey.
Have you known defendant for the same proximity of time as you've known the plaintiff?
I'm sure we met around the same time. Yes.
And Ms. Burley, how frequently would you say that you see the plaintiff on a weekly basis?
It depends on the time of year. During hockey season, a lot more, probably once a week or more. It's been a little more sporadic when we're not at the ice rink.
And in the times that you see the plaintiff, are her children ever present?
Yes.
In those instances, have you seen the plaintiff express love and affection towards her children?
Yes.
Can you give a specific example or explain why you answered that way?
Yeah, they're a very loving family. I mean, every time I see them together, they're hugging. They're just a loving family. It's obvious to anyone that's around them.
And Miss Burley, have you seen the children? I guess, never mind, scratch that. Miss Burley, from your interactions with the plaintiff, do you believe that she supports the children's education?
Yes.
Why would you say that?
Well, Jen's a teacher. We've had conversations about education before in general. It's something that, yeah, is a high priority for her. We've had conversations about it before.
Has the plaintiff ever helped your own children?
I don't know specifically, but it has been offered. I know she's a math tutor, and I've given her name out before to help other people that have needed tutoring.
Miss Burley, have you ever seen the plaintiff, Jennifer Kloosterman, like discipline her children?
No.
And Miss Burley, have you ever seen the plaintiff provide food for her children?
Yes.
Can you give a specific example?
Well, we have teenage boys, so they are hungry all the time. There's always food available. There's
And
been many questions we've been at where she's brought food, or yes, many times.
Miss Burley, have you ever seen the plaintiff provide medical care for the children?
No.
Miss Burley, have you ever seen the children seek comfort from the plaintiff?
Yes.
Can you give an example?
As I said before, they're a very loving family. I mean, I can't think of a specific example of something that happened, but she's always there for a hug for her kids. It's not an uncommon thing to see her hugging her children, or just there for them in general.
And Miss Burley, when you see the plaintiff at these, I think you said hockey events, does she appear engaged with the activity?
Yes.
Have you ever seen her offer encouragement to the children during these events?
Yes.
How did you see her offer encouragement?
Well, being there is a big part of it. As much encouragement as you can offer from the other side of the glass at an ice rink. She's always there after the game to say good job, and she's there as much as she can be. Having 3 active kids in sports, that's got to be tough, dividing time between all of them, but she makes it happen. I don't know how she does it.
And Miss Burley, in the context of extracurricular activities, have you ever seen the plaintiff speak negatively to the children about their performance at the extracurriculars?
No.
In the context of extracurricular activities, have you ever seen the defendant speak negatively to the children about their performance?
That's a tough one. Hockey is a bit of an aggressive sport, so I'm not sure.
Can you explain your answer some more?
I can't think of a specific example.
And Miss Burley, aside from attending the children's extracurriculars, do you know if the plaintiff is involved in any other capacity in regard to those extracurriculars? So like aside from just attending the games?
Yeah, she's often involved in whatever other coordination there might be for banquets or award ceremonies. I know this isn't extracurricular, but she was room mom at our kids' school last year. Anything that needs to be helped with she's typically involved.
And Ms. Burley, in the times that you have seen the plaintiff interact with her children, have you observed any behavior from her that you would consider to be concerning?
No,
In the times that you have seen the defendant interact with the children, have you observed any behavior from the defendant that you would deem to be concerning?
I'm not sure. I can't think of a specific example.
Ms. Burley, have you ever heard the plaintiff speak negatively about the defendant in front of the children?
No,
And have you ever heard the defendant speak negatively about the plaintiff in front of the children?
I am not around him enough, I don't think, to know.
Ms. Burley, do you know if the plaintiff and defendant are currently residing together?
I don't know for a fact, but from my understanding, they are not.
And is your child friends with one of the minor children in this case?
Yes,
Was there a point in time where you needed to decide if you would permit your son to stay the night with one of the minor children in the care of defendant?
I'm really not comfortable answering these questions about my child in particular.
Okay. I have no further questions.
Ms. Schmeltzer, any questions for this witness?
Yes, Ms. Burley, you stated that you met both parties, both parents, about 2 years ago in the context of your kids playing hockey together. Is that correct?
Correct.
Sort of being sports parents and attending games and events related to hockey, is that really the majority of your frame of reference as to either parent? Or do you spend time outside of hockey with the family?
The mass majority of time was at hockey.
Was Mr. Klusterman also present?
Yes,
Would you say he was present more often than not present, or rarely present? How often?
because they have 3 kids, they had to divide their time, so it just depended on the weekend.
Was this travel hockey where you went out of town for tournaments or games?
Yes,
Were there times where Mr. Klusterman was alone, traveling alone with their son Kelvin, and Miss Klusterman was not there, that you observed?
yes,
And you kind of testified a couple times that this is a very loving family. They hug each other and things like that. Is that also applied to the children and Mr. Klusterman in your observations?
yes, I think children are generally a little more loving toward their mother physically with hugging and whatnot, but they all seem to care for both parents.
You've observed the children hugging and talking to and interacting with Mr. Klusterman at these events as well, right?
Correct.
Would you say that you're more close or more friendly with Miss Klusterman as, you know, 2 moms of hockey children versus with Mr. Klusterman?
Yes.
You testified that you've never seen anything that concerned you about either parent with respect to how they cared for or interacted with their children. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And it's true that Mr. Klusterman took your son golfing with their son Kelvin and wakeboarding approximately a month ago.
Approximately. It was this summer, I believe, but
And you were not present for that, correct?
correct.
And you had no concerns over, you know, sending your son for a few hours that day to be with Kelvin and Mr. Klusterman, correct?
I have a teenage boy. I'm always concerned about what he's doing and who he's with.
Certainly, no concerns that he would be harmed in any way or was in any kind of danger or anything like that, correct?
At that time, no.
And Mr. Klusterman was able to provide the children a good day of activity, lunch, things like that, and returned him to your care safely?
I mean, I wasn't there. From what I understood, they had a good time, but yes, he returned home.
Nothing further, thank you.
Any redirect, Ms. Lentz?
Briefly, Your Honor, Miss Burley, this golfing wakeboarding incident that we just talked about, did you know that your son was going with Mr. Klusterman at the time prior to it happening?
Yes.
And you had, were you upset about that situation?
I am upset usually when my son asks me at the last minute to do something.
And Miss Burley, were you nervous to testify today?
Yes,
Why?
because my child is involved and he doesn't need to be.
Miss Burley, would you say that your concern for your own child is affecting the way you answer the questions today?
Yes.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Are you suggesting your child's at risk of harm? I mean, I don't understand.
Our kids go to school together. I don't,
Have either of the parties in this case threatened you or your child? I guess what I'm getting at.
no.
Okay, Ms. Schmelzer, did you have any final questions for this witness?
No, I think the court's questions covered what I was going to ask. Thank you.
All right, thank you, ma'am. You're all set.
Thank you.
One second, and then so I still have Garrett DeVries.
Yes,
I don't
Your
know,
Honor.
but that's
Sorry.
how it's spelled.
I interrupted you. I didn't mean to.
I was just stating who's in the waiting room still.
Yes, Garrett would be my next witness, Your Honor. Your Honor, Mr. DeVries is in a different room of my office. He is an older gentleman and I'm concerned he doesn't know how to hit the join audio button. Could I please have, oh, there we go. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Matt Hagan. I'm the referee in this matter. You've been called as a witness by Ms. Lentz and her client, Ms. Lentz.
Oh, geez.
We just lost the screen here.
As I said, Your Honor, I think he's struggling a bit with the technology. If you could give me a second, I'm going to have one of my staff members make sure he can reconnect and then have him not touch anything after that.
No problem.
Okay, thanks.
There you go.
Mhm.
Okay, Mr. DeVries, can you hear me?
I can, sir.
All right, thank you. So as I was stating a few seconds ago, my name is Matt Hagan. I'm the referee in this matter. Ms. Lentz and her client have called you as a witness, so she'll have some questions for you. And then if she chooses to, Ms. Schmelzer may have some questions for you, okay?
Okay.
All right. 1 second.
Mhm.
Mr. DeVries, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
We're getting some feedback. So it's seconds ago. My name is Matt Hagan. I'm the referee in this matter. Ms. Lentz and her client have called you as a witness.
You know what?
So
Get
she'll have
Megan
some
back in
questions for
here.
you. And then if she chooses to, Ms. Schmelzer.
I think we got a conflicting computer here. Are these two competing against each other?
Oh, yeah.
We're getting feedback. Yes, I can. Yep, I can now.
That, Ms. Lentz, is that you're a staff person?
Yep.
Yes.
The
We got
person
it.
can stay in there. That's not, person's not gonna be a witness, right?
Hey, Megan, could you
We're
just
good.
stay
I think
for
we're
with
good
your,
now.
okay.
I mean, it's,
We're
I
good.
don't mind. I
not
know
gonna
the
be a
staff
witness.
probably has other things to do. I'm just saying. If you need someone, that person hasn't been sequestered. Okay, so Mr. DeVries, you can hear me okay now?
Yes, I can.
Oh, but if we start to get the feedback or that echo again, we'll just stop and deal with it. Because,
I think we got that handled here. So.
all right, thank you. If you'd raise your right hand, please. Do you swear from the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, Ms. Lentz.
Mr. DeVries, can you state your full name and spell your last name for the record?
It's Garrett DeVries, D-E-V as in Victor, R-E-E.
And Mr. DeVries, how do you know the plaintiff in this matter, Jennifer Kloosterman?
She's my daughter.
Do you know the defendant in the matter, Kevin Kloosterman?
I do by marriage.
And do you know the minor children at issue in this case?
Yes, I do.
Mr. DeVries, paragraph 7 of defendant's July 6th objection to the temporary order for custody, parenting, and support accuses you of instructing the plaintiff to capture the children saying things on video to use against the defendant. Mr. DeVries, are you instructing your daughter to record the children to use against the defendant?
Never.
Mr. DeVries, paragraph 8 of defendant's July 6th objection to the temporary order for custody, parenting time, and support accuses you of trying to intimidate and harass the defendant. Are you intimidating or harassing the defendant?
No.
Mr. DeVries, was there a time in June of 2023 that you came to the marital residence?
What date was that? It's very well possible. Yeah, I would say so. I don't know exact date, but yes, it's possible.
And can you explain why you would be at the marital residence?
To visit my daughter and grandkids. That's usually why we come here to Traverse City. No other reason.
Would your presence at the marital residence have been to intimidate or harass the defendant?
No.
Mr. DeVries, paragraph 9 of defendant's July 6th objection to the temporary order for custody, parenting time, and support accuses you of stalking the defendant. Are you stalking the defendant, Kevin Kloosterman?
No.
And Mr. DeVries, the defendant's status conference brief accuses you of coaching the plaintiff to turn the children away from the defendant. Are you coaching the plaintiff to turn the children against defendant?
No.
Mr. DeVries, defendant's status conference brief accuses you of purchasing a boat for your grandson in an attempt to buy his affection for the plaintiff. Did you purchase a boat for your grandson in an attempt to influence your grandson's decision?
No, I did not.
Can you explain the boat situation?
The boat was a boat from my grandparents. They passed away in the early 80s. In the estate, I was granted a rowboat. It's been hanging on my barn for near 35 years. And Kelvin said he wanted like to go fishing when they separated. And I said, you know, I can help out there. I have a boat on the back of my barn that's been sitting there. So I got it. I cleaned it up. I had an electric motor that I got from selling stuff in my business 35 years ago. I pulled it out of the basement, hooked it up, and I brought it to Kelvin to use for fishing.
And Mr. DeVries, how would you characterize your daughter as a mother?
My daughter is probably one of the best mothers that I would know. She's very thoughtful. She's very caring. She puts her kids first before her own needs. Yes.
I have no further questions for you, Mr. DeVries.
Ms. Schmaltzer, do you have any questions for this witness?
Yes, I can confer with my client just briefly.
Yes.
One moment.
Yeah.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. DeVries, in late June or early July, isn't it true that you were parked in a vehicle outside of Mr. Kloosterman's workshop
Yes, I was.
and you were observing him, correct?
No, I was not.
Why were you there?
You want the short version or the long version? I'll give you the short version. We were gonna leave. It was a Sunday night. We were going to,
No, that was in April.
that was in April already.
That was.
Mr.
Um,
DeVries.
Whoa,
Oh, hang on, objection. This witness is being coached.
No, I'm not.
Well,
I just heard a female voice correct his
Can I take
testimony.
care of this, please, Ms. Schmelzer? Yeah, somebody's in there telling you what to say, sir, so that,
Okay, my wife is in here. Don't she not? She just got the date.
No.
but-
Mr. DeVries, can you have her leave the room?
Yes, I
Sorry,
can.
you can't
Yes,
be in
I'm
there.
sorry. I'm sorry.
obviously, she's not gonna be able to be a witness now, you're aware of that.
She's not a witness, Your Honor.
Who else is in the room, sir?
Nobody. Nobody.
That person isn't even in there?
No, she's not anymore. She left.
All right, Ms. Schmelzer.
Sorry about that.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sir,
Yes,
you do admit that you provided the 15-year-old son a boat for fishing after the party separated, correct?
yes, I did. Yes,
And you've also sent him pictures of additional boats, instructing him that these are things you could purchase for him, correct?
no,
You
I
also
sent
bought
him-
him snowmobiles.
no.
You've never offered to purchase him anything else. The boat is it.
I never purchased a boat for him. The boat was for him to use. It is my boat. It's for all my grandkids to use. So, no, I did not.
And your
Oh.
testimony today is that you've never sent Kelvin any pictures of any other boats, snowmobiles, or made any other offers to purchase things for him.
I have sent him pictures of boats and snowmobiles for me to purchase, and I sent them for him to, hey, what do you think about this one? That's for the only reason. I do not buy my grandkids toys.
Prior to the party's separation in approximately April of 2023, how often did you go to the marital home?
It varies on the week. It could be once a week. Maybe we've been there 3 times a week. It depends.
I'm asking about prior to April of 2023.
Not near as often, maybe once a month. I don't keep track of a calendar. I don't do that.
You live out of town, correct? You don't live in the Traverse City area or Northern Michigan area.
That's correct.
Where do you live?
I live in Zeeland, Michigan.
And approximately how far away is that from Traverse City, or more specifically from the marital home?
2 hours and 15 minutes, probably 150 miles. I don't know.
And since the party separated in April, your visits became more frequent, weekly or multiple times a week. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Were you in the marital home the day that a person by the name of Christy Caldwell was in the marital home,
Yes, I was.
and the children were also present?
I know Kelvin was. Yeah, the other ones would have to have been there too. Yes.
And Miss Caldwell is an employee of Miss Kloosterman's attorney. Is that not correct?
Yes, I believe she was.
And during that incident, isn't it true that things like a PPO and or a CPS investigation were being discussed openly in front of the children?
I'm not sure what you're asking me there.
Miss Caldwell, an employee
Yes,
of Wilson Kester Law Firm who represents Miss Kloosterman, was present in the home with you and the children, correct?
that's correct.
And topics regarding a PPO and or a Child Protective Services investigation were discussed in front of the children that day, correct?
The only thing that was discussed is what the rules and regulations of the PPO were. To clarify that, and it was only to Kelvin, not to the girls.
Kelvin, the minor child who's 15 years old, is that correct?
Yes,
And you grabbed Kelvin's arm when he tried to walk away and told him to listen, is that correct?
I don't recall doing that. No, I do not. I
I have
usually.
no
do
further
not.
questions for this witness.
Any redirect, Ms. Lentz?
Yes, Your Honor, briefly. Mr. DeVries, do you know, was an employee dropping off the entered PPO at the marital residence?
Excuse me?
Was the employee from my office delivering the entered PPO to the marital residence, to the plaintiff.
I believe she was, yes.
And Mr. DeVries, do you have any knowledge of a CPS investigation being open in June of 2023 when this PPO was delivered?
No,
And Mr. DeVries, to be clear, when you text the minor child pictures of boats and snowmobiles, are you attempting to influence him or have a conversation with him?
I am attempting to have a conversation with him. I like to interact with my grandchildren. And I've been out of snowmobiling for 3 years now, and I'd like to get back in, so I like his input. He's 15 years old, he has an input. I like his opinion of things.
Mr. DeVries, if your child, just as a parent, if your child's going through a difficult situation, is it normal for parents to be more supportive during that time?
Yes, it is. In my case, it is.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any final questions, Ms. Schmelzer?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
All right, we'll go off the record briefly here.